B1AGers, what's up? We're back again with another agricultural conversation from a B1 perspective. We have a special guest today for you. But before we bring on our special guest, we all know that the world's richest man, Jeff Bezos, just stepped down from Amazon. Now, outside of that, I'm not really going to talk about him stepping down from Amazon, but did you know that Jeff Bezos owns 420,000 acres of land? Now, we just did a story not too long ago about, Bill Gates. He owns over 260,000 acres of some of the richest farmland in the country. And now you have Jeff Bezos, another businessman who owns 420,000 acres of land. Now, that poses the question for me, is land becoming the new piggy bank, or has it always been the new piggy bank? You have these two extremely wealthy businessmen who are investing so much into land. You know, Not only is it an investment, because land is such a prime entity to own, because we're not growing more land, so in itself, land is valuable. However, land is also can be a almost like a placeholder for wealth. Instead of just looking at a bunch of digits on your phone or your computer with a bunch of zeros saying how much money you have, when you buy land, that's something you can actually go out and touch. All right. So without any further ado, I'm gonna bring on Farmer Brown, the MC. Hey man, put something on their plate, man. Give them something to eat. What we eating today?
B1AG. I want the bag. Work my way from a garden to a track. Flip it from a track to a plot full of acres. Do it for the farmers and producers and the makers. Peace, fam. First I like to say shalom to the family. Hope everybody's doing well. I'm not one to pocket watch. I think that's a disrespectful thing to pocket watch, what other people are doing, what other people are spending. But I do, the agriculturalist in me, the learner in me, does watch land ownership. And you were just mentioning Jeff Bezos with the 420,000 acres. And then you have Ted Turner. This is a big network guy, CNN. He owns 2 million acres in North America. And so it makes me think about the Louisiana Purchase. This was the largest land purchase in the world at the time, and it was the French. And I think they spent $15 million in this span the land from the pretty much the Mississippi Valley Basin, and this goes all the way up to Montana, up to the East Coast, or Midwest. So saying that to say we're in 2021, and this is the bag that the richest people on the planet are chasing. And when you think about stock markets, when you think about all of the areas of society where we generate, where you generate wealth, what we general rule of thumb is you follow what the people who are successful are doing. And when I think about Bill Gates, I don't think I've ever heard the word farm come out of his mouth. I don't think I've ever heard the word agriculture. But I do know if I'm just following, what are the moves he's making. So he is one of the biggest investors in plant-based products. This is your vegan meat. This is your Impossible Burgers that you can get at Burger King, Wendy's. When you think about the future of agriculture, we realize a lot of land gets used by livestock production. Once again, you need at least 2 acres per head of livestock. So when you factor this in across the country, this takes up a lot of space. For black farmers, livestock production is the largest revenue earner. So when we think about Bill Gates, okay, we know a few years ago he invested in all of these different plant-based uh, companies, as well as the pink slime that we had talked about a few shows ago. And this is the meat that's grown in labs. A lot of this is based around sustainability, around how do we preserve land, because as these cows are out here grazing, we got millions of them in the country. They're pooping, for lack of a better term. The poop is going into the rivers, they're farting. This methane is going up into the atmosphere. And so if you're coming from a scientific approach, there's a lot of justifiable reasons why we would want to go to a more plant-based diet, why we would want to reduce the amount of livestock we're producing. But as entrepreneurs, as we are in B1AG, we want to look at what do these gentlemen and these families understand about purchasing land, and not just any land, but specifically farmland. It makes me think about, okay, it's agriculture. Bill Gates never talked about agriculture, but his moves are based around, he just bought, 260,000 acres of some of the primest farmland in North America. This is in Louisiana, Arkansas, and Missouri. Bezos, New Mexico. I know he has some up in Wyoming and a few of the areas in the West. What this turns into is a resource. Regardless of what the world is turning into, these gentlemen realize I'm going to purchase something, I'm investing in something that will consistently appreciate in value. And this is land. Right now, my excitement and optimism is based in the melanated family. We have the means. I'm not going to say we can compete with the Bezos or Turner or Gates, but we have the means to procure land now for these production operations of the future. There are some people that are in real estate that, have no interest in going out working on a farm, but they understand the concept of procuring land. So maybe these institutions are able to work with the grassroots community organizations who are doing workforce development, youth training. They're able to work with local producers who are actually already in the ground, already have the experience. They're able to work with marketers to create a system for our youth to go into in the next 10 to 15 years. We keep going over this statistic that the melanated family is going to be at zero wealth by 2050. And so right now we have about 30 years? We have about 30 years to prepare this infrastructure that we want to produce. And this is our opportunity. And so saying that to say, the gentleman we have today has figured this out masterfully. I was fortunate to meet Mr. Crawley back in Atlanta, Georgia, back in 2002 doing hip-hop. I met him through hooking up one of my homeboys from Lexington, Kentucky, getting him connected to get a record deal. One of the things we had talked about in the beginning is how many of us, we felt like coming up, the best way to get money was either be in the streets, either be on a court or a field or on a stage somewhere. And Mr. Crawley, these are just relationships he's developed over time. Just knowing how to connect one person that can do this with another person that can do that. He's done it on the rap level, like on levels that many people will never understand, far above underground. But saying that to say, he's been wise enough to figure out there's a way to leverage that same skill within agriculture. And before I say too much, it's just an honor for me to introduce Mr. Hashim Crawley. This is, like I said, a longtime friend of mine, an associate, someone I look up to greatly as far as a businessman and an entrepreneur. And he has a venture called Auntie's Yams. Coming up in ATL, I know everybody remembers the early 2000s when Jeezy came out. This is, it makes you think about BMF, Blackout, makes you think about the Out the Trunk with the mixtapes. So Mr. Crawley has mastered a concept of how do we make mixtapes of agricultural products. From there, how do we make a mixtape of agricultural products that's produced by melanated farmers? How do we enrich this network that's already growing? The work we're doing, like I said, we're a pixel on a much larger screen. So how do we make this picture better? And this is what Mr. Hashim Crawley represents. So real quick, brother, tell the people, who are you, what you doing, man?
Hey man, good to talk to you. I haven't talked to you in a minute. I'm Hashim Crawley, and basically, like I said, B1 advocate, businessman, small business advocate, and consultant. After looking at Black Soil UK Wild and seeing the website, I noticed that on the website, one of the things you guys work with your Black farmers dealers was Yams, and that was it was big, it was plastered on there. So immediately when I saw that, the light bulb went off, and I called you and said, how quick can you guys get those out to me? I think I got an idea. We can make an end product, using those and really show people what Black ag is in terms of going from farm to shelf and farm to table looks like. And it only took us 3 days kind of after I got to Lexington, to kind of whip up some sweet potato pies based on that, kind of get out into the community and see how people would receive them. And then you did the bang up job on the on the logo and get that fashion, get the ingredients and everything lined up for us. So, and it's been going well since then. The only thing that's left is the packaging and the Auntie Yams again. The And What song, with Jeezy and Manny, it comes to mind, and it was just a way to kind of connect the actual product, to the community and to the youth, where they could kind of identify with it. So, that's kind of where the branding came from. But more than that, it's really about job creation, and it's about specifically, empowering of, kind of Black men. So I'm gonna just read something just real quick for you, just based on a study from some material I've been going over. It says in the last 40 years, low and middle income Black men experienced the sharpest decline in their chances of real earnings over time. If Black men are unable to provide for their families or financially contribute to their families' fortunes, they will likely feel inadequate, be reluctant to marry, and become unappealing to our Black women as marriage prospects. So, just in a nutshell, that decline and the impacts of that decline directly impacts our entire community, as a whole. So one of the missions of, this initiative is to kind of get not only the youth involved, but specifically Black men involved into this area where we can facilitate agriculture, where we can facilitate job creation, and at the same time show them that you can take these products that come directly from the ground and you can create your own economic situation from it. And these should lead to an uptick and an upswing into these statistics that, we constantly are talking about in the political realm, but nobody's really putting any action steps or action plans to it. So
here at B1AG, we like to operate on a code. Code meaning every time you plug this into a wall, you'll flip a switch and a light comes on. We take no chance with conjecture, conspiracy theories. We're trying to be very specific. And we're in Black History Month, and a lot of times we hear about your George Washington Carvers, your Harriet Tubmans, Frederick Douglass. But we were speaking the other day about elder Booker T. Watley. He was a professor down at Tuskegee University, and back in the 70s, he wrote a book called How to Make $100,000 Off of 25 Acres. $100,000 off of 25 acres. And this was a code. A lot of times we talk about not recreating the wheel. This was a wheel that was created back in the 70s. Since then, this is the gentleman that created the whole CSA model that we use today across the planet, where consumers are able to pay the farmer up front to get the produce that they want throughout the year. So saying this to say, back then, and we've actually done a study to where he had a model to make $3,000 per acre, growing specialty crops. These are specific crops that the consumer wants. We're not just going to grow experimental crops because we want to feel like farmers are green thumbs. We know there's a consumer to buy this. We know that there's the space to grow this. The math of that 3,000 today is 6,000. And so when we think about this job creation, when we think about Black farmers are down, I would say close to 20 to 30,000. You can never really be too sure with federal statistics, but we're looking at between 20 to 30,000 Black farmers left when we're dealing in specific of acreage. And so we realize a lot of farmers, their revenue is coming in from livestock production, which requires a lot of acres. But we also realize we have food insecurity, which sweet potatoes are very healthy, or yams are a very healthy source of food, a very healthy diet, part of a healthy diet. When it came to your mind about agriculture, obviously you weren't into farming, I don't think, when you were growing up. How did that connection come to you to actually look at it as a product versus you being somebody out on the farm with the straw chewing on a corn cob?
Well, I mean, being that my mother's side of family is from the South, I kind of grew up around those things. So my grandmother, who's still living today, she used to cut and pack sugar cane She worked at corn packing fields down in Florida. So, I've had a chance, even as a young kid, to see those things. And even then, those are things that, because of how laborious it was, I was always encouraged and steered away from that, in terms of, from a manual labor perspective, that really didn't pay a lot of money. As an adult, what I understand is that, being the owner and facilitator, now as a landowner myself, understanding that you can purchase a piece of land, no matter how big or small, and you can facilitate, things on it that can generate revenue, or you can rent or lease to someone else to do those things and actually earn without actually lifting a finger. And understanding that, unique recipes like the family recipe that I've innovated on to make my sweet potato pies is something that people will actually pay you for. So that's kind of like where the connection is drawn. Like, for example, McDonald's is the largest landowner on the planet. McDonald's, the franchise, is not what makes the money, not the burgers or the buns or the milkshakes. It's the lease agreements with everybody who has a McDonald's franchise. If you look at Jewish culture and history, which, I study, because Newark, where I'm from in New Jersey, that area is traditionally a Jewish community. My house was traditionally a Jewish house, and there's a Jewish synagogue down the street, very big one, that's now a Baptist church, but it's on the corner of my house. But understanding that, although they physically left after the riots in 76, 77, they, in terms of land ownership, they never left the community. And whenever you see them, they drive up, they jump out, they're looking at the houses, they're taking pictures of other properties they want to acquire, they get back in their cars and they drive back to the suburbs. So they're still controlling our communities strategically, through land ownership. So it's very important for us to understand, the value in that, and that we, just like them, should be aggregating our funds and creating boards, so that when we go to the county foreclosure auctions, we don't get outbid. They can go to any auction, they can outbid anyone in that room if it's a property they really want, because it's not the man in the room who has the money. It's a board that has a fund, and they're sending him saying, these are the properties that you are to get, and, spare no expense. So until we get ourselves positioned in that way, whether we start big or small, we're going to always be in a position of asking, as opposed to being able to facilitate and demanding certain things that we want in terms of providing for education and marketing and nutrition. So we don't have an economic power position to operate from currently. And that's something that we're hoping that with this initiative, that we kind of start to change that in the mindset of the youth, that should translate into actionable items in the next 5 years.
You brought up New Jersey. And when we think about just, what do our communities look like, I can't help but to think about the Great Migration. A lot of people in New Jersey that live in New Jersey, New York, once you go up Philadelphia, your Chicago's, your Cleveland's, your Detroit, these are people that migrated from the South somewhere, whether it's the Caribbean, Florida, your Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi. I think about, we're in Kentucky, so I'm kind of in the middle of it, right? There's a different industriousness. If we like to be very scientific. There's a different type of industrious nature from somebody who's lived in a Chicago, a New York, a New Jersey. You're in an environment where there's millions of other people that have every right and desire to eat, survive, get to the next day and provide the best opportunity for offspring. That builds a different type of industriousness in an individual, right? When I think about where I'm at in Kentucky, these are some of the smartest people. I've traveled around. I've met a lot of people, and these are some of the most creative people in the world. Like ideas you can never think about when you think about Marvin Gaye's, Muhammad Ali. There's a lot of people in this area of what we'll call North America that are creators. When you think about the Deep South, this is where your music comes from.
Right.
We're talking about business on B1AG, and I've just, ever since you brought up Auntie Yams, I've been enamored by, wow, living here this long, I've been enamored by agriculture, and just, my mind automatically goes to talk and running my mouth. But somebody that came from an area where there's a lot of people that just understands business as it's almost like a second nature to you, how quickly you are able to capitalize on this opportunity. And I'm thinking about this great exodus that's happening in these larger cities, is the point I was bringing up about the great migration. There's a lot of people leaving the cities because, New York City, what you're going to pay for a one-bedroom apartment or efficiency, this is an acre of land, somewhere farther south. And so I'm curious to know, do you see any, when you're projecting into the next 5 to 10 years, the concepts of gentrification, do you see any sort of cross or area of collaboration between your northern cultures that are more, I guess, industrious as far as business, that fast, able to get to it immediately, and then that southern productivity? Do you see any connection between that, or is that just kind of an abstract idea?
No, definitely it's a connection. And I honestly say that it's just not really a product of the North either. If you look at Atlanta, it's very industrious, and you got a lot of movers and shakers, and of course you have a lot of transplants in that area too. But you can definitely see that there are people now with the internet and with transparency of things online who are kind of being shown the way. And you probably got people right in your own backyard that are being just as industrious as I might be. It's just a matter of connectivity. So what I would really say is the goal for, say, a Lexington, Kentucky, or like a Georgetown, Kentucky, a small place, is that, again, land ownership and facilitating space where you can invite that in, if that's what you feel like is needed in that community, is job one. If you can create housing, if you can create jobs, to actually campaign to get people to come into, those spaces who have that mindset that you think would be useful into the growth of that community, then it will happen. The talented and the people that Du Bois and that they invited in to start those movements, they were from different parts of the country and different places, but they created spaces to facilitate that. And once they created that, then people started to come and flock. And as things started to progress, then that started to grow, and then you building your own urban centers.
What does Auntie Yams look like in 5 years?
It looks like multiple products. It looks like a standalone processing center for dry and frozen goods, and potentially, depending on how the pendulum swings, health wise, it looks like a place where people can come and actually enjoy just healthy food that's with that as the base product.
Now, with Auntie Yams being a product, of course, it must be marketed. And I know we touched on how the idea was sparked from that Young Jeezy song, and what, hide your yams at my auntie house. And now you have these Auntie Yams sweet potato pies. Now, could you just touch on how important marketing is for products in general, but also how we, as especially the hip hop generation, have been known to market for so many other products, whether we're paid for it or not, how our own intuitive marketing powers can be used to market in agriculture?
Definitely, that's the most important aspect of having a product, a service, anything, is the marketing aspect. You have to get out in front of the public. They have to connect with you and resonate in a certain way on your product in order to participate and purchase. specifically with this product with Auntie Yams is really more so about the cultural competency of the product and the movement, connecting with us in a way that we understand, kind of being prompted and pushed into areas of entertainment. Um, we have to be able to be educated enough to know how others have marketed to us and to use those same techniques to do that, um, while bringing equity to their support in terms of dollars, reinvesting in the community and job creation.
SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Coming from your perspective within the ag sector and your niche, what are the strengths? What are the weaknesses? What are the opportunities and threats?
I mean, I think the strengths are having people like yourself, kind of authorities, folks who are actually, always delved in it and working in it and have programming around it. I think, people may look at it otherwise, but I think, COVID and the fear of food insecurity has actually strengthened our focus on where food comes from and why we should, do what we do in order to promote that agricultural sense in our kids and get people back into farming or urban gardening. Um, Weaknesses is really just, again, it goes back to the cultural competency, bringing agriculture out of the 60s and 70s in terms of a mindset of how it's being done, and putting the marketing arm around it, because farming has always just been farming, and people who understand it do it. People who need it purchase or support it. But we're in a different space now, and because it is something that's more widely needed, there's more opportunities, and since plant-based and healthy eating has become like a focus in the wellness community, there's definitely some areas of opportunity where we can kind of take advantage of that from a marketing standpoint at this point. The only threats, honestly, really would be, it's twofold. It could be technology, but then on the other end of that, it could also help us. So technology may reduce time, but it also may reduce labor. At the same time, technology may increase production, and it may, like you said, help us with emissions and different pollutants that may help to give us a higher yield and a higher volume in terms of what we produce. And it may save, lives over time, because we all know that, the ecosystem of the planet overall has been suffering based on the things that we've been doing from the manufacturing era. So now with agriculture and greenery, kind of the more that we can bring that back, the more we can kind of slow down the aging process of the earth. We can't really stop it at this point.
I think about these youth, the period of COVID, and so black poverty has gone up 25%. This is just since March of last year. Our food insecurity as a whole is gone. Is one out of it was 1 out of 5. And I think it's now 1 out of 4 black households are food insecure. And you were talking about jobs. I think that's really the biggest thing. We can talk about all of these problems, but what are the solutions? When I was growing up, my mom always told me, act like it's nobody but you and God. You can throw these ideas around. You can hope something works out, but act like it's nobody out here but you and what put you here. What, in your mind, what is the best, most effective from point A to point B, from your experience, your life experience, your knowledge you've obtained, to the mind of somebody that's, say, 14 years old, that's going to be an adult in whatever this world turns into? As an optimist, what is that point A to point B? How is that connection best made? How can you take this idea that you've come up with Auntie Yams, and how can you transmit that to X amount of young people with, great potential to maximize that? What's the shortest point from A to B?
To be simple, is really just what I call my I+A formula. It's information plus application. Or information plus action. My path has always been education, but my effectiveness in terms of being able to get things done and kind of achieving goals has just been immediately applying what I've learned in kind of a real way. And that's no matter whether it was something that is math, where that translates into business and counting money, or whether that's something that may be theory in terms of how human beings behave and what their tendencies are, and me actually putting that into practice in a real situation, whether it be at my job or somewhere else. We just have to, it's not really anything new. We just have to really engage our youth early, and we have to give them a value set that says that if you take education and you take that action, whether it's in a workplace or whether you want to create your own thing, you will eventually be successful, And, we have to teach our kids how to fail fast, meaning that, you don't really get success unless you have failures, and there's no losses, there's lessons. So if they're not learning from making those mistakes quickly, picking themselves up, assessing what happened, and then going right back at it, they'll always kind of digress to feeling like I can't do this or I can't do that, because of that one failure. So, one of the greatest lessons that, my grandmother taught me early was, working and how you get paid. She created a system for me where I had to record hours for chores around the house, and she created a pay rate, a minimum wage pay rate. And once I learned that and learned that that's how people get paid, I took that to the next level, almost to the point where like she had to stop doing that, because she was like, well, you taking too much of the paycheck that I'm getting every 2 weeks now, because I would just make up things to do, because it's like, okay, if I want this amount of money because I want to go buy this, or I want to go hang out and spend this amount of money on the weekend, then I got to put in this many hours. So, that also kept the house, tip top shape and clean, because it's like I had to find little different things to do and clean up, each and every day in order to kind of earn that money. But that was a value set that, it stayed with me and I carry with me. And that's why when I look at opportunities, it's easy for me to jump in and say, okay, I can see how we can turn this into that, and how that can translate into a revenue stream, no matter how big or small. So what we have to do is we need to, in the next 90 days, start to identify properties and land that will be available. And we have to aggregate whatever pennies we have, to get it. And then once we get it, all the creativity that you talk about, all the ideas, that will flow into that space and that piece of land. What we don't want to do is sit back, try to see what happens, and then, try to beg or demand that we should be in a space that's just not owned by us. We have to get past that. And I'm not saying that we're not due reparations or that we shouldn't fight for those things. But if our elders who are from the civil rights movement want to continue to carry that banner, we'll allow them to do that. We will support them. But in turn, we need them to understand that we need some of those dollars back into our information plus application plan of, hey, we're going to go buy this 13,000 square foot, green space, and we're going to convert this into a farm, a garden / processing center / storefront, so that we can do some farm to shelf, initiatives with our children and start to teach them about not only farming, but entrepreneurship and marketing.
So, this has been a blessing. This has been a blessing. So you brought this up 90 days. You were very specific. This is code. Not no, one day when something come down and help us and save us, one day when these people, change their mind. You was very specific. So we have the Million Black Shovels formation, 4321, April 3rd, 2021. That day will never, ever, ever happen again in the history of man. And the concept is, I want to know, is it possible? I'm not married to any outcome. You know, personally, I would like to believe that it's possible for 1 million melanated black individuals, that would equate to 2 million hands, to do something at high noon. It'll be noon on the East Coast, 11 in Central. You know what I'm saying? Is it possible for us to do one activity that takes less than 10 minutes silently? You know, irregardless of our political standing, irregardless of religion, ideology, what you do in your bedroom, how you feel about what you just saw on your news, on your live stream. Is it possible for us to all do something engaging with this land? You said 90 days. That's big. That's big. Is it possible for us to all have our attention focused on something for 10 minutes silently? Digging in the ground for people that are doing urban gardens or any sort of gardening activity. 10 minutes for any black farms in rural areas that want to bring some kids out to get a farm experience. 10 minutes for somebody that's, you know, sticking strict to the social distancing. I just want to kick it in my apartment, but I got a balcony. I got a pot. You know, I can run to the store, get some soil, and spend 10 minutes of my day, you know, with this little this funny formation thing. We're supposed to set our phone up and show 10 million black people that understand the value in land and our connection to it. Is it possible? And if it is, what does that look to you after this 90 days? How does that look? And then any final thoughts you have?
I think it's absolutely possible. I believe that, you know, we will always get together for things that we value or that we think make sense to us. I believe that if we can go viral on all these social media platforms, you know, just based on somebody creating a dance, we can definitely do the same thing on a marked date that's intentional and is planned in terms of what the mission of it is. I would even go as far as saying that, you know, after everybody spends that 10 minutes, we should have a fund and a repository for everybody to also, you know, Cash App or electronically send $1 or even 50 cents to a one central location immediately after that 10 minutes is up. And again, go and actually purchase, you know, the land that we're speaking of. You know, go ahead and facilitate, you know, the purchase of space that will eventually be used to educate about agriculture and to create the next generation of young entrepreneurs and products. It's really about being owned by us and grown by us. And that really should be the mantra, you know, for the entire 2021.
Optimism. You know, I tend to believe this is our finest moment. This is your finest moment. When you look at any ecosystem, it is those organisms that can withstand the wind, they can withstand the heat, they can withstand the cold weather, they can withstand the viruses. When we put this on a human sense, these are the groups that can withstand economic depravity. These are the groups that can withstand all of the social dynamics. And when we think about the basic fundamental of existence of any living being with a heartbeat, and even plants, is food. And, you know, I tend to believe, the optimist in me believes, the day that we remaster. And see, that's the beauty we have, is we come from the people who already mastered this millions, hundreds of thousands, whatever one's ideology of years ago. Getting back to that point, you know, me personally, in my world, I feel like we will be our most powerful again. And not only for us as a people, as a community, as a family, but for the whole planet. If we can acknowledge that everything came from the womb of a black woman, and for those of us that say everything came from Eden, it only makes sense that to get this world back to the balance that we want, you know, this concept of getting back to normal. Normal wasn't the last 50 years. Normal wasn't like the last 100 years. Normal was whatever was set in motion in the beginning that none of us know. But if we know these this gene stock that we come from was here in the beginning, it only makes sense to me that getting black to the garden would be our strongest point. And when I think about Bill Gates and Bezos and Turner and all of these different people, I saw a brother put on there Queen Elizabeth. America is the prime farm trap. Way back with the sugar cane, the barley, the wheat, like America is the prime ag trap. And I think it's the thing, like you said, it's not a situation where we're asking. This is a situation where we can, as a group, what resources do we have available? There's fiat resources, there's sweat equity, there's all sorts of different currencies that all of us bring to the table in some way, shape, or form. And so it's really getting to a central concept, a central idea. As the elder Neely Fuller says, a central code. When we plug this into the wall of society, into the wall of humanity, for all, this isn't an all lives matter thing. This is about when we're at our best, the world does better. When we sit back and let other people, trip over themselves trying to fix the world, it creates messes. And so in my modest opinion, I believe when we step up, as the bulls of this planet, when we swing our head, the rest of the jungle gets in place. Do you have any other thoughts as we head out?
You just really hit it right on the head right there. You just really kind of wrapped it up. Like, that's exactly what we really need. And I'm very optimistic also that this is the time. It's just really a matter of, again, taking this information. We're in the information age, and just constantly applying action to it. If we have a conversation on Wednesday, by Friday, something should be in motion. And it doesn't take a lot because, like you said, the foundation's been laid. We don't really have to recreate the wheel. It's just a matter of going back, replaying the tape, looking in your inbox, and pulling it out, and definitely just activate it. We go back to Marcus Garvey, we go back to Booker T. Washington, we go back to all of our elders, George Washington Carver, who's created over 200 uses for not only the sweet potato, but also the peanut. And if most people don't know, there's a reason why GM and Ford and all those places is called a plant. It's because George Washington Carver was the architect of how to line those things up the same way when you garden, there's rows that you till. It's because he was somebody who mastered a plant and how to produce things in mass, that he was the person who, maybe not in the front, but on the back end, was the person who was consulting on how to construct, those car plants where they move along in that same formation, and certain things and processes are done to each one of them until they get to the final place where it's a complete vehicle. So again, to your point, we are the architects of the majority of the things that this nation enjoys and that we boast about. It's just time for us to acknowledge that and really start our kids out young. 14 years old during the height as Black people, we were grown at that age. We were getting married at that age. We were starting families at that age. We are now prescribing to somebody else's plan that says that your child is an adult at 18. We know from our own environments that a lot of our children are adults and functioning by themselves by the time they're 12 to 14, just based on the instability of the homes. So knowing that it's time now, while we're in place sheltered, while you have the opportunity to teach your child as opposed to sending them off to a place to be programmed, to start to instill that now. They should be 14 and 15 years old and already with a bank account and already with a credit card that's attached to your credit card account so that they can build their credit. So when they turn 17 and 18, again, we're not asking. They have the credentials to kind of do the things that we are doing now, but we need to cut the time in half, because that's the only way that we're going to progress to a point where we, quote unquote, catch up, with society.
Well, this has been another great discussion in Black agriculture. We'd like to thank our special guest, Hashim Crawley, Auntie's Yams. Hide the yams at my auntie's house. You see the logo. You see it. Auntie's Yams. Black business. Now this he's just showing you that even though he's not a farmer, he can still participate in the world of agriculture. Again, tying back to what we started off with, Bill Gates, Bezos, Jeff Bezos, two businessmen who did not start out in agriculture, never talked about it, yet they're some of the biggest landowners. Not pocket watching, not necessarily copying, but just paying attention. What do they know and what do they see? You know, we're not growing more land. You know, land is very, very valuable. And they're scooping it up. It's a big land grab going on. Get you a piece, get you a slice. And as we always like to end every show, if you really want to know something, let's do it again. If you really want to know something,
grow
Learn
something.
how to
G.
grow something.
y'all see it. All right. We'll see y'all tomorrow with another discussion in Black agriculture. This is B1AG, and we out.